Hello and welcome to our May 8th, 2026 Freshet Friday podcast as we jump into the second week of May with the latest news from Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. I'm your host, Geof Wheelwright, and with me on the podcast this week are the veteran journalists and founders of Freshet News, Janice Clue, Teresa McManus, and Cornelia Naylor. Mario Bartel will be joining us near the end of the podcast with some exciting news about how New Westminster is thinking about how it will celebrate one of its sports legends. Welcome back, team.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Okay, so the first item we have is a bit of a hot topic, and it's a bad pun on my part, but after a week in which spring temperatures felt more like summer, I was interested to read Teresa's story about how the city of New Westminster is looking at ways to expand its recently introduced plan for keeping apartments cool in times of extreme heat. So, Teresa, do you want to tell us more about this potential expansion of the initiative?
Sure, Jeff. Yeah, as folks might remember, in March, Council had endorsed a business bylaw, and that would require landlords to maintain safe temperatures in at least one living space in rental units. And this all came about because of the terrible deaths that the city experienced during the heat dome. And so in response to that, they sent out information to the medical health officer, who came back with some suggestions for making that a little tougher. And originally, the initiative required buildings to have a space that was 26 degrees or below between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And the medical health officer, Dr. Lindsay Bowthorpe, has recommended that that be 24 hours. And the thinking of that was that really it's hottest in the peak afternoon times of the day, so why wouldn't that be included? So council was pretty supportive of the changes, and it's going to go back to staff who will look into it. Yeah, it's based on everything that's been said in council chambers. It seems like this one's going to be a no-brainer.
So I'm interested, did they talk about potential methods of enforcement for this?
They have not. And they've also, one of the things that the medical health officer did say in her letter to council was that the city is taking a real collaborative approach with the landlords. They are allowing exemptions, for example, when it's needed. So at this stage, I haven't heard of any apartments that have actually gone about implementing this. So we'll have to see once it starts rolling out how that's actually takes effect in the different buildings.
Great. Well, thank you. And sticking with the weather theme, as the weather turns brighter and warmer, the sports seasons also change, with football and hockey making way for golf and baseball. And Janice, I saw that you had a fun story this week that combines both of these sports to raise some money for a good cause. Do you want to take a swing at this?
Thanks, Jeff. Well, for the first time, Coquitlam Little League and Coquitlam Reds are getting together, and they're going to be hosting a fundraising tournament that will proceed, with the proceeds going to both the clubs. This event takes place on June 5th at the Green Tea Westwood Plateau Golf Course, which is absolutely beautiful. It's an afternoon tournament and it includes a buffet. And so they're looking for sponsors and they're looking for players to come join and to play golf for a really fun afternoon. The information is on the website, and I would really promote these two clubs. Of course, we're talking about at least 1,000 families, and the proceeds will go to the field equipment and operations.
Now, these two baseball teams that are hosting the golf tournament, are they normally competing with each other?
They're not. They're separate ages. So Little League would be under 15, and then the Reds are the 15, 16, 17, 18. And they're the ones that are getting ready for university and college.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that, Janice. And I want to stick with you and talk a bit about a major organizational anniversary that happened this week relating to the Elizabeth Fry Society. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. Did you know that the Elizabeth Fry Society of Canada started in New Westminster?
No way. I didn't know that.
I did not know
85
that.
years ago, it did. Elizabeth Fry was a British reformer, a prison reformer, and she was quite appalled by the conditions in England when the men and women were put together in prison. And of course, there was a lot of abuse of the women, and she was appalled, and she wanted to create policy and reform. The society came to Canada, and it started right here in New Westminster. So I spoke to the CEO and the director of philanthropy, and this week is the anniversary week. It's the Elizabeth Fry Society week, and on May 8th, you're encouraged to wear blue to celebrate. It's actually called Blue Friday, Fry Friday. and to show your support for the societies. They're having a lot of events this week, and they do a lot of good work in the community, of course.
Thanks, Janice. Now I'd like to turn to our Freshet 911 segment and talk with Cornelia about a new dedicated remote testimony room to protect vulnerable victims from re-traumatization at BC courthouses. Cornelia, do you want to tell us about how this came about, as well as the difference it will make for victims testifying about what they've been through?
Sure. So this is a first for Burnaby. We've got the Camry Child and Family Services that have ahead of, well, next week, as you may or may not know, it's Victim and Survivors of Crime Week. And ahead of that, they announced that they are now providing Burnaby's first and only remote testimony room to keep children and youth, as you said, and other vulnerable victims and witnesses from being re-traumatized in court. It's a room with reliable, secure tech designed for remote testimony in court. And instead of it being kind of a stark courtroom, it's got a rug, art, comfy chairs, coffee table, and a sign under the TV that says, "Be strong and courageous." And people who need to testify will have a chance to visit the room and become familiar with it before testifying. This is to help people who are vulnerable victims and witnesses, such as children and youth and survivors of sexual violence, to feel safe as they testify. One of the things found in a recent report by Rise Women's Legal Center found that many courthouses are unsafe for survivors of violence. There's just a few stats here. 60% not providing multiple entrances and exits, 94% not providing multiple ways in and out of the courtroom, and 46% not providing private waiting space. The reason this is important is because these victims and witnesses, maybe they're witnesses to something violent, maybe they're victims, alleged victims at this point, because we're innocent until proven guilty in this country. But I've been in courthouses where there is only, as it says here, there is only one way into the courtroom. And so the alleged perpetrator, the accused, is going into the same door as the victim or the witness. They have to wait in the same waiting areas, unless somehow you have a support worker that sort of heads that off at the pass. But I was talking to Shelby, a person who doesn't use her last name for safety reasons. She's a child and youth victim support worker at Camry. And she said that she's had these things happen with her. She's supporting a client in court when they walk, she remembers running into the accused in a hallway and the accused making a comment which actually violated a no contact order. In another instance, a client encountered the accused. They both were sitting and having lunch in the same small cafeteria at the Vancouver Provincial Courthouse, which isn't very big. I've been there. One of the problems in Burnaby is that we don't have our own courthouse. So all of the people who need to testify need to go into an unfamiliar neighborhood, and 2224 Main Street, where the Vancouver Provincial Courthouse is a bit of an intense neighborhood if you've ever been down there, very close to Hastings and Maine. And even BC Supreme Court is when you go in there, it's, again, you might run into the accused, and it's very intimidating to go into a courtroom. You have to go past the bar. You're away from everybody. Sometimes you have a support worker with you, but I've seen these. It's very intimidating to be there. So this gives people a chance to be familiar, comfortable with their surroundings. To address some of these problems, the courts have been more open, especially since COVID, to vulnerable victims and witnesses testifying remotely. But in the early days, this victim support worker, Shelby, it was just a laptop in her office, and there were technical difficulties, glitches, and that was stressful in itself. So this is going to make a world of difference. People will feel more safe. There's less chance of running into the accused and being re-traumatized. According to Camry Child and Family Services, it's also going to lead to more accurate, more complete testimony. So good for justice in the end.
Cornelia, thanks for that. I also know you have a couple of other things for us. It sounds like the first one is about someone who walked out of a McDonald's restaurant with something a bit larger than a Big Mac and an order of fries. I definitely want to hear more about this one.
One of the more interesting things is that this came from a reader who sent in a photo, actually, of two men leaving, and one of the men with kind of a metal box under their arm. And the reader, Diego Molina, thank you. Shout out to you for sending that photo. And he said that it was two men who had just walked off with the till, the cash drawer in Coquitlam. They'd walked off with the cash drawer. And so I checked in with Coquitlam RCMP, and sure enough, they are investigating. They were called there it was earlier in April. They were called there after reports of, it was just about $350, but I just thought it was kind of brazen that they would allegedly wander off with a cash drawer. So they investigated. They weren't able to find the suspect. They did find the cash drawer on the Burnaby side of North Road, very close by, with some cash still in it, which I thought was kind of bizarre. Who would leave cash in the drawer and abandon it after you've gone through the trouble of taking it? Anyway, and one other story that I'm following up on that fits into this Freshet 911 category is an unfortunate event that happened last Saturday, where two children were involved, pedestrians, two young people, a boy 11 and a girl 9, were involved in a collision on Hastings Street and were seriously injured and sent to hospital. I'm following up on that. One of the things is to find out how they're doing now, if there's any update on their condition, but also whether a scooter was involved. One of those e-scooters that are everywhere now, it seems. There was a scooter at the scene, a mangled scooter at the scene, and some damage to a Mercedes that was involved in the collision. And I'm trying to confirm with RCMP. They haven't, as of Thursday night, they hadn't confirmed yet whether that scooter was actually involved, if either of the children were on it. I know that it's people online are going nuts, blaming parents for letting children have scooters, which seems a bit premature since we don't know yet what they were doing with it. But it is a safety issue for sure. It's a growing concern. I know that Burnaby, and this is part of what I'm going to follow up on in my story, is in the process of passing bylaws that would have made riding an e-scooter on Hastings contrary to the bylaws. So that bylaw will shut down riding on major arterial routes in Burnaby. So those are my updates for Freshet 911 from Burnaby.
Thank you. And it sounds like there's more to come on that scooter story. Thank you for that. And now we're going to turn to Janice and what's on this weekend and this week. Janice, I know you have a great story about a rebrand for a popular local arts organization and some exciting events to look out for in the coming days.
The Evergreen Cultural Center is a 30-year-old building. They're having their anniversary this year. And it's a building, very prominent corner in Coquitlam. Is at Pine Tree and Guildford, right at like kitty corner from City Hall. It was built with cinder bricks and it was a temporary building. And guess what? 30 years on, it's still there. And so what the board decided to do, I spoke to the chair, Jill Cook, and she said it was time for a refresh. And they rebranded to Evergreen Arts because it has more focus. They felt that the word cultural was very ambiguous. And so they wanted a little more definition as they go into their next 30 years, hopefully in a new building, and they are allowed to keep it from City Hall. It has been on the books, of course, for 30 years. In terms of coming up for this weekend, it is May Days in Port Coquitlam. This is a beloved festival. It starts with a bike race at 10 a.m. on Saturday, a big parade at 11 o'clock. Just along Shaughnessy there. And then in the afternoon, head to the downtown Terry Spirit Square. And it's a party for the afternoon, lots of food, lots of people gathering, and it's lots of fun. And of course, Sunday is Mother's Day, and I want to really spend this time thanking my colleagues and wishing them a happy Mother's Day. Teresa, Cornelia, and me, we have,
Janice,
between the three of us, we have 8 children.
Wow.
You counted.
I did count. And happy Mother's Day to you.
And
Me
you.
too.
Well, happy Mother's Day to all of you. And I'd also like to call out 2 other events near and dear to my own heart. The annual Queen's Park Neighborhood Garage Sale on Saturday, which takes place a short walk away from where I live. It runs from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. throughout the neighborhood, and I'd recommend starting at 3rd and 3rd and go early before the best deals disappear. The other one's on Saturday as well, and it's the Great Salmon Send-Off at Stony Creek Community School in Burnaby, and it runs from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and it's a fun event for the kids and a great chance to teach them about the life cycle of a salmon. So now we're going to turn to sports, and we have a great story from Mario in sports this week. I talked to Mario earlier about why there's an effort underway to achieve recognition for a local sports legend. The headline tells the story. Is it time for old-time hockey coach Ernie Punch MacLean to get a statue in Westminster? Here's our conversation. So Mario, you have a great story this week about a way to celebrate the legendary Ernie Punch MacLean. There's a group that's trying to find a unique way of remembering his many, many achievements.
Yeah, remembering might not even do Ernie Punch MacLean justice. He's quite a character. A group called the Ernie Punch MacLean Legacy Foundation held a bit of a news conference at Queen's Park Arena on Wednesday to announce their intention to try and get a statue erected in honor of Ernie outside the stadium, outside the arena. It was the site of some of his great conquests in junior hockey. Ernie was a longtime coach of the New Westminster Bruins in the 70s. And he actually brought the team out here from Estevan, Saskatchewan. He was a part owner of the franchise and brought them out to New West in 1971 looking for greener pastures. The league was a little hesitant at first because at that time it was all prairie-based. They didn't really have the WHL, Western Hockey League, didn't have a presence on the coast. But so this was kind of a new thing for the league. And of course, now there's teams in Vancouver and Victoria as well. And Ernie was kind of an old time hockey guy. Like you think of irascible, old time hockey people who give no quarter and are just immersed in the game and live and breathe the game. And that pretty much describes Ernie. He was, I met him a few times in the 90s. He's still around. He's 93 years old. He lives in Coquitlam. He still shows up at hockey events and is willing to talk your ear off about anything. Most recently, they had a bit of a gathering in Coquitlam at the John B. Pub where they were remembering the famous photo that some people out there might be aware of Ernie throwing a garbage can onto the ice at Queen's Park Arena during a game against the Portland Winterhawks. Ernie did not feel happy about it.
Wow.
An alleged missed penalty call by the referee, and he took it upon himself to let his feelings known to the referee and tossed the garbage can onto the ice. The referee brought it back, and Ernie threw it back on the ice again. And Craig Hodge, Councillor Craig Hodge, a Coquitlam city councillor back then, was a young budding photojournalist for the Columbian. He caught the moment, and it went across the country on the wire services, and it became quite famous. And he was at this event with Ernie and a bunch of other media types, and they were having a lot of story exchanges and yucks and yeah, Ernie's a colorful character. There's no shortage of Ernie Punch McLean stories out there. I'm doing a little bit of research for this story. There is one story out there that the referee who had the garbage can thrown on the ice got away easy because another referee lost his toupee to Ernie when he was also upset and reached over and just ripped the referee's toupee off his head. There's a video on YouTube I found where there was hockey in the junior hockey in the 70s, especially with the New Westminster Bruins, was quite a thing. There was a lot of fighting, brawls, and bench clearing brawls. It was a different kind of a game than we're used to seeing now. And there was a skirmish going on with all the players on the ice, including the goalies. And I think it looked like, in front of the YouTube video, it looked like the Portland Winterhawks again. And I guess one of the players on the New Westminster Bruins got a little bit injured, and the goalie for the other team, which may or may not have been Portland, was skating away from the scene, and he was making all kinds of mockery of the player who was allegedly hurt. And that incited Ernie to slide across the ice in his powder blue three-piece suit and go after the goalie. I mean, you don't see those kind of things. You don't see those kind of things in hockey anymore. It was definitely a different era. He once punched a referee who was skating past the bench. He got a 25-game suspension for that. But amidst all that, he was successful. He led the New Westminster Bruins to 4 Memorial Cups, winning 2 of them in a row. He coached over 1,000 games, almost 1,070 games, which still stands as the second most all time of any coach in the WHL. And there's about 250 players who made it to the NHL for at least a game who were under Ernie's coaching during their junior hockey careers at some point. So I guess there was method to his madness, and although one famous story that's out there is, yeah, he could identify talented players, but he did not want Wayne Gretzky to be on the Canadian national junior team in 1978. He thought Gretzky was just 16 at the time, and he thought he'd be too small and not strong enough to go up against older, stronger players. So he did not get an invite from Ernie to the training camp, to the tryout camp. Eventually, he did make the team, and Gretzky scored 17 points in that tournament. It was in Montreal and Quebec City, and led all the tournament scorers, and Canada finished in third. So, and I guess Wayne got the last laugh ultimately. And as much as Ernie was colorful on the ice, he was colorful off the ice too. I mean, he was a miner, he was a prospector. He had a stake up in the far north. Back in the Saskatchewan days, he was on a light plane that crashed, and he lost his left eye. There's another story out there. Once he got his foot run over by a bulldozer, and in 2009. He got lost up in the Dease Lake area where his mining stakeout was. He was missing for 4 days and 5 nights. Nobody knew where Ernie was until a helicopter happened to be flying along on the search and saw him just loping along an old horse trail. I guess he'd slipped down a gully and got a little disoriented. And when he came out of the gully, he didn't exactly know where he was. And he was 77 years old at the time. And people were kind of writing him off, like how does someone that old survive in the bush in the cold, unforgiving north for many days and nights, and he's still around. So yeah, this foundation wants to put a statue up. They've launched a bit of an awareness campaign, trying to collect names on petitions, and as well as raise some funds for the statue.
So, in the midst of all of this, has Ernie commented what he thinks about having potentially a statue of him?
He's 93 years old. He's still out and about in the community. Peter knows him from they work out at the gym together at the Poirier Rec Center in Coquitlam. And last year, Peter was so impressed he actually wrote a song, the ballad of Ernie Punch MacLean, that you can find on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, it's and the broadcasting community that remembers those days, the media community from back in the day, they're kind of throwing a little bit of their support behind this effort, and like Farhan Lalji, New Westminster broadcaster at TSN, he was the master of ceremonies on Wednesday's event. So he's he's a character, and it seems like it's a genuine effort to recollect this crazy era in the past.
Well, it's wonderful to see a plan to celebrate him like this. And so now we're going to turn to our favorite stories of the week. And who would like to go first?
Go, Jeff. Mine is a story that has not yet ran online or in print, but it's coming up. And it has to do with the redevelopment of Royal Columbian Hospital. For anybody who's gone by that site in the last 5 years, they've seen the construction that's taking place, and it is getting very, very close to having the Jim Pattison Acute Care Tower completion. Mario and I were very fortunate. We recently went to a ribbon cutting for one of the spaces within there, and that was the Jack and Sylvia Ginn Emergency and Trauma Imaging Center. They made a substantial donation to the Royal Columbian Hospital Foundation for that space, and it's going to be a real help to the folks that are going into Emerge. While we were there, we also did get to tour the emergency department, and then we were able to get up to the super floor, and it's going to be. I think folks are going to be really impressed when they get in there. It's beautiful. It's bright. It's light. There's windows, and apparently, according to one of the emergency room doctors that led us on a tour, that's not what you see when you watch The Pit, but I haven't watched it, so I can't say for certain. But yeah, no, so I'll have a story coming out about that. So, because it was, I know folks are really excited to see that done.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Cordelia, how about you?
Well, this one's not such an amazing story, but I really like the one about the cash drawer, mostly because I love when our readers reach out and give us little tips like that, especially Freshet 911 type tips, because we can't have our eyes and ears everywhere. And often the best stories come from readers just sending in a tip. I'm not going to just publish what they say, but once we check into it, sometimes the story is even more interesting once you look into it and confirm with the various, public safety officials or whoever else is involved.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that, Cordelia. And Janice, how about you?
Jeff, on Sunday, I was at the Eagle Ridge Hospital, and the auxiliary celebrated 50 years, a golden anniversary for their pros. They have raised over $2.2 million from hospital. This auxiliary started before the hospital even began, right? It was 5 people petitioning to make sure a hospital was built. They started the auxiliary, and guess what? They got it built, and they've been fundraising ever since. A quarter of their fundraising has come in the past 5 years. These are really cool volunteers they are largely retired now. There are some very young people that are getting their volunteer credits, but these women have worked in banking, have worked
Huh.
staging. They've worked with every kind of industry, and they're now spending their time helping the hospital raise money for patient care. And it was such a joy to go and take photos and have some fun with them.
Oh, that is fantastic and a great story. Yeah, my mom was president of a hospital auxiliary, and I
Huh.
remember that, and just the wonderful community spirit of everybody participating. So it's fantastic to hear 50 years. That's really impressive.
Sure is.
And my favorite story, no surprise, is the one about Ernie Punch MacLean. I mean, he is such a character and such a legend, and I think Mario did a fantastic job, and you will have heard his comments earlier. Definitely check that one out.
Yeah, Jeff, I have to say just about Ernie Punch McLean. I was at a Salmon Bellies game a couple of years ago at Queen's Park Arena, and he was at the game, and people were just, they parted. It was like, oh, folks were pretty excited to see him there back in the old
Yet,
barn.
when legends walk among us.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. And that wraps up another week of the Freshet Friday podcast, but we'll be back soon. And we'll be back in print again next Thursday on May 14th. In the meantime, keep asking yourself the question, is it Freshet Friday yet? And come on back when the answer is yes. Thanks to our team for being here. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.